Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to Mindshifters Radio with your co-host, the Forgiveness Doctor, Dr. Michael Ryce, and his wife, Jeanie. Michael and Jeanie share with you the wisdom of the ancient Aramaic internal process of forgiveness. They offer tools and support 5 days a week. They will support you in building a solid foundation within yourself to live in pure love. In Aramaic, Rachma. Michael is the author of So Why Is This Happening to Me Again? For more information on Michael and Jeanie, please visit www.whyagain.com. And now your co-host, the Forgiveness Doctor, Dr. Michael and Jeanie Ryce.
To the brightness within you and the truth that is rooted within me.
Well, good afternoon and welcome to Mindshifters Radio with the Forgiveness Doctor. That's Dr. Michael Ryce. Today's February 2nd. It is our Memorial Day celebration 249. I guess when we reach the 1 year mark, I'm going to quit counting and we'll just refer to it as our Memorial Day celebration. However, we've now been on the air for over a year, and it's been a phenomenal year here on the show. Our calling number is 646-200-4169. If you want to talk to Michael, press 1. That puts you in queue. We'd love to hear your comments, your questions, and we're glad that you've joined us today. Hello, Michael.
Hi, sweetie. Welcome to the show, everybody. We're delighted that you're with us, and we're absolutely awesomely blessed to have this opportunity to support you in this process that we're engaged in of understanding and learning forgiveness. The Memorial Day celebration that Jeanie refers to is our request, which we make daily. It invites you to be willing to look at something in your life today that perhaps you've been blaming someone else for, that you're willing to be rid of in your life, that you're willing to be finished with. And, of course, to be finished with it, you've got to be willing to take responsibility for it because it's something that's happening in your field. And if there's hostility or fear, it's a marker in your own structure that there is some form of dissociated content that corrupts your mind's output and has you looking at things in a way that makes internal conditions look like they're external. So hostility or fear is a marker that there's something inside me. I'm building a picture of something outside of me and hooking my hostility or fear to that which is outside of me. Now that I believe that it's outside of me, I cannot change the corrupt data that produces that particular reality or that particular output from my mind. And so if you look at the logical conclusion of that, it leads to all sorts of anger, rage, hatred, fear, murder, and ultimately to war. What's the hook with Memorial Day? What's the hook with Veterans Day? Well, what we're looking to do is to eliminate war on planet Earth. And that means that we're going to have to get enough individuals who have literally eliminated their capacity for any form of hostility or fear. As we limit our capacity for hostility or fear, then we return to a human life. And our definition of a human life is just hold a newborn. There are no words for it. Just hold a newborn. You know what a human life is. And so if you are in some form of hostility or fear towards someone today, the logical extension of that ultimately is war. And so our request is that you change your mind. That you say, okay, my physiology, my emotional body is producing hostility or fear. Let me test this out. I'm not saying believe anything I've got to say. I'm just saying test it. Try it. Actually, go to whyagain.com, and on the right-hand side, you'll see a link that says download worksheets. Go to that section and start doing some worksheets around whatever that hostility or fear is. without any form of belief or faith in anything, all you have to do is start to forgive, and what you'll notice is things change. Things inside of you change. You know, I've had people who are dyed-in-the-wool atheists who take this forgiveness process. Of course, it's based in the work of Yeshua, and they object because that's got to do with God. Well, this process has nothing to do except with what's going on inside of your mind. And it shows you the technology with which to remove from the mind what does not belong. And so we invite you to pick up that process. Put the pen to the paper, with or without belief, and watch what happens. It's really quite amazing to see what people get in touch with under the surface, and then what they move through. And if we can get enough people through that gate of literally being at the point where they fully embody a human life, that is the active presence of love, and they have no capacity left for any form of hostility or fear, we are individually and collectively going to eradicate war from planet Earth. That's what we're here to do. That's part of our job description. We volunteered for the task, and we invite you to join us. Anyway, Jeanie, do we have any callers? Is Dr. Tim with us? Is David with us today? Let's say hello.
David is with us. We don't have anybody with their hand up yet. We've got several people in the chat room and also on the phone. Calling number again, 646-200-4169. Press 1 to go into queue. But nobody has their hand up yet, and there's no questions in the chat room. Hello, David.
Hello, Jeanie. Hello, Michael.
How are you, good sir?
I'm doing well, and you know what I heard you saying in the invitation was to, for people to go to the website and to put the pen to the paper. And one of the, along within that line, that's really what it's all about, is for people to have their own experience and their own insights to what it is that's going on in their mind, that to intellectualize it, discuss it, which is part of the learning process. And this real key to it is about putting the pen to the paper and challenging what it is that's being heard and said through their own mind versus debating whether something is true or whether it isn't true, for the people to have their own experience of just what the truth is. And you talk often about what is the truth, and to me, just like describing a newborn child, there aren't any words for me to describe the essence of that child, and there's only the experience of it. And like with the truth, there's only the experience of the truth of what, and for me to put the pen to the paper, for me to do my work, then I introduce and open up the opportunity for me to experience the truth. So I think it's a good invitation to folks.
I definitely agree, and the process of forgiveness is an amazing, amazing tool. And what happens is that when we go into forgiveness and a whole different conversation than the one about how you're supposed to let somebody else off the hook because something's happening inside of you. Of course, that leads to the belief that the something that's happening inside of you is outside of you, and it's just another belief that leads to war. So we're going to invite you to stop forgiving others, stop forgiving yourself if you've been taught to do that, because that's not forgiveness. It has nothing to do with letting yourself or others off the hook for what's going on inside of you. And we're going to invite you to start forgiving. That is, going inside yourself and removing what never belonged. And, the world of psychology tells us that we might be aware of and or use 3 to 5% of our brain. And if we're in a space we're aware of 3 to 5% of what's going on inside of us, obviously there's a lot going on under the surface. And when we put something under the surface and refuse to look at it, that process is called denial. I hide from me what I don't want to look at and deal with. And what happens is, by hiding it, I've actually added energy to it. By adding energy to it, I literally set up an energy field that pulls somebody in to do it to me. They're going to do it It's going to bring up the hidden part of my mind, but an interesting thing that happens when someone brings up a hidden part of my mind is I create a picture of it, of somebody outside of me, whoever I'm pointing my hostility or fear at. And then my mind shows me a picture of them, and they are made up, in terms of what I see and experience, they're made up of the energies that I'm hiding inside myself. So it really looks to me like it's their problem. And, of course, one of my favorite tongue-in-cheek lines is, if they're the one with the problem, why am I the one with the pain? Obviously, if they're the one with the problem, they would be the one with the pain. I would have no pain around their problem unless I have a problem. And if I enter into a conversation all about them when I have pain or turmoil, then I'm avoiding the part inside of me that holds my problem. And we're asking you to give up avoidance by forgiving. And again, that means by going inside yourself. There's a worksheet process on the website, whyagain.com. Right-hand side, download worksheets. The first 4 links will give you the whole forgiveness story, including personal guidance through the worksheet process. The 3rd and 4th link are each worksheets sessions that we've done on radio shows. So you can listen, and you've got personal instruction through the whole process. And, of course, if that personal instruction doesn't quite get it for you, then please pick up the phone, call 646-200-4169, 5 days a week, anytime between 1 and 2 o'clock, and you'll get to talk to Jeanie and to me. If David's on the phone, you'll get to talk to David. If Dr. Tim is here, you'll get to talk to Dr. Tim. And we'll give you input on how to proceed with this process of forgiveness. And what the amazing thing is that happens when you go through what was taught 2,000 years ago as forgiveness compared to today's so-called forgiveness of letting other people off the hook. The Aramaic forgiveness process literally collapses the projections, collapses the images generated out of the dissociated part of the mind. And by definition, if you're in pain or turmoil and talking about somebody else, you're in dissociation. That we'll call that the definition of dissociation. I'm in pain or turmoil, and you made me angry, and you did this, and then when you did that, and you walked over to Charlie, and you said this about me, and that really hurt me, and I just, you better change, and things, that's all dissociated mind talk. All that conversation means about everybody else is, I'm not willing to look inside of me. Or I don't know how to look inside of me because my whole culture has taught me that it's all everybody else's fault. Well, here's what will happen. Here's the magical, awesome, amazing thing that will happen if you actually engage in the forgiveness process. You will collapse the conversation about everybody else. Now, that's not always easy. We had fun actually a few months ago with Richard. Maybe listen to the show because he'll probably call in and give us a quick hello. Richard was at Heartland this summer, and Richard called in for assistance and support on a worksheet. That's actually the 4th link under download worksheets. And Richard was in a little bit of resistance and dissociation. So we got to play with Richard through the worksheet, and several times, 8, 10, 12 times, had to say, Richard, well, let's go back and talk about what's going on inside of you, as he would start to talk about somebody else. And, he was very willing and very playful about it, but finally clicking into, what I'm dealing with is inside of me. And that's the difficult thing because our whole culture has taught us it is caused from the outside. Nothing is caused from the outside. But if you hook something on the inside to something on the outside, you're now dissociated, and you can't change that part of your mind. Once you dissociate, you can, what was that song, wishing, hoping, dreaming, and planning? You can wish and hope and dream and plan and pray and critically think about all the painful realities in your mind until the cows come home. None of them are going to change until you collapse the projection, until you crack open that dissociated state of mind. And when you come back into, and this is what forgiveness empowers you to do, when you come back into direct relationship with what you've dissociated from, instead of being in indirect relationship through projection, then you get to change that content. You get to shift what's going on in your mind that never belonged there. And, you know, if you hold a newborn child, you know exactly what human life is. Hostility and fear just don't belong in these human forms. When we're functioning out of hostility or fear, we're not functioning as human beings. And it's time for us to begin to function fully, totally, 100%. Well, yeah, but what if somebody does something really terrible? Well, I'll tell you what. The most intelligent part of you is your human beingness. That part of you is absolute genius. If you've got somebody in your environment that's doing something really crazy, off the wall, insane, you know, whatever you want to call it, you are going to be in absolutely the best place to cope with it if you are connected to your human mind. But if you are connected to the dissociated mind and talking about them, then your intelligence is reduced because perception is defiled by hostility and fear. The human structure is not designed to function plugged into hostility or fear. You know, anybody got a machine at home of any kind or sitting out in the driveway that if you don't put the proper fuel in or plug it into the proper power supply works well? I don't care whether it's toaster, your car, your van, I don't care what it is. It's not plugged into the proper power supply. It doesn't work well at all. Well, in precisely the same way, you are designed. If you have what's called a human form, that human form is designed to be empowered and powered by the active presence of love. That's where your highest capability is. That's where your genius is. That's where your highest true intelligence is. And so if someone can come along and resonate or trigger in you hostility or fear, instead of hooking it to your brain's image of them, why not just get rid of the hostility or fear? Why not dump it? Dumping it's called forgiveness. The Reality Management Worksheet is how to do it. So, Richard, if you're listening to the show, we appreciate the fact that you played with us that day and did that worksheet, and we got to demonstrate pulling back into conversation about self instead of everything and everybody else. Because that's just what our culture teaches us to do, is to talk about everybody else and think that the solution's outside of us. And so we want to come back to the place where the real solution is, and that's inside of us, and back to our highest wisdom and intelligence, which is through our connectedness to our being, which is love, and the presence of that love as our power supply. Our calling number, 646-200-4169. We would love to hear your sweet voice if you have a thought, question, answer, idea for us. Jeanie, any callers?
There's a question in the chat room, and it's, can you please explain the difference between projection and externalization?
Absolutely, that's a good point. The culture tends to define projection as taking something that's inside of you and putting it outside of you. And that's, I believe, an incorrect understanding. Projection, well, let's just talk a little bit about one of the capacities of the human mind and the truth about what goes on in the world. If we listen to Max Planck's a guy who's receiving the Nobel Prize in Physics. And here's what Max says. He says, as a man who spent his entire life studying matter, I can tell you this much. There is no matter as such. He says our entire world is made up of succeedingly smaller patterns of vibratory fields nested one within another within another. And so we have these nested fields, these vibratory fields. Now, you and I look out through our brain and we say, no, there are not nested fields out there. There are not vibratory patterns. There are physical things. Well, that's a little fraud perpetrated by the mind. If you've been taught to see physical things, it's called a state of hypnosis, then you can't see the vibratory fields and the energetic patterns around you. Some people down through the ages have been able to see those things, and actually, in many cases, they were branded as witches because the liars of the culture didn't want anybody who knew the truth and could see what was really going on, and so they would destroy people who could see beyond what were called the material senses. So, again, Max Planck tells us there is no physical. So if you could look out and see what was actually in front of you when you say you're looking at a person, a body. You wouldn't see a body. You'd see this whirring mass of electrons, protons, neutrons, and light. You would not see a body. But because you've been hypnotized, and of course it takes about 3 minutes for a good hypnotist to put somebody into a somnamblistic state and see things that aren't there. And if you've ever raised a child, you know how many times you said to that child, face, nose, eye, hair, ear, chin, lips, teeth, nose. You know how many times you did that. A lot of hypnosis. So we've been programmed or brainwashed to see physical stuff where there's no physical stuff. There's actually an excellent interview on NPR. Go to npr.com and Google not Google, but search on NPR for Jill Bolte-Taylor interview. Jill Bolte-Taylor is a neuroscientist who gets up one morning, realizes she's having a stroke, and describes how the construct of the physical world from her left brain breaks down as she has a left brain stroke. She just tells the whole story of how this thing is just a construct. So when I look at you and I see a body, your vibratory pattern resonates certain brain cells in me, i.e. my hypnosis that you're a body. And so my brain produces a projection, an image, a picture. Maybe a better example of that might be, imagine you're laying out on the beach looking into the clouds, and I'm sure lots of you folks up north right now would love to be laying on the beach, and you're looking in the clouds, and all of a sudden you see a clown's face in the clouds. Now, everybody knows there's no clown's face there. All there is are water droplets that come together in a certain shape that resonate brain cells that cause you to project an image from brain cells of a clown's face. So in your brain, you see a clown face. There's no clown face up there. I don't have a face. If you look at me and you see a face, you're seeing something that isn't there. I have a vibratory pattern, much like the water droplets in the clouds, and you've been trained to project face. Now, remember when you were laying there watching the cloud and you saw this clown, and you were maybe at the beach with somebody, you turned and said, oh, see that funny clown's face up there, and they look and they go, duh, what are you talking about, clown's face? There's no clown's face there. And you say, well, look, you see that third cloud over there, the big one in the middle? You see that up on top? See how fuzzy it looks, just like a clown's hair? And then right below that, you see those two dark spots? That's the eyes. And then you see the nose, that big bulbous nose, and then you see the lips, like they're drawn on. Oh, yeah, I see the clown. Well, now that you've gotten the brain cells firing for me by your description of the cloud, my brain projects clown face. And I go, oh, I see the clown face. And now all of a sudden, I look at the cloud and it's now a clown's face. Has a clown's face appeared in the last 2 minutes? No, that's a projection from the firing of my brain cells. I would offer that everything material is a projection. It is an image projected from the firing of brain cells, and we've been trained to see it that way. So very much like the person who didn't see the clown face when they first looked, you helped the brain cells to fire, so their brain projected an image similar to the one you see. People love to have people who see the world the way they do, and anything based in hostility or fear is insane. Projections from a hostility or fear leave us in a space of a loveless mind and compromised perception. So projection is the firing of brain cells that produces the images that we see. Then, once we have that image firing and we see that within us, then we pretend that that image is outside of us, i.e., I look out and you fire brain cells in me that I perceive that your face is angry. And so my brain projects angry face, and then I externalize the angry face on you, and I insist that you have an angry face. And you say, gee, I was just grinning about something I read in the paper. What are you talking about, angry face? That's your externalization of your projection. And so our whole language, the whole language of our culture, is based in the externalization of our projections. And, in the ancient teachings, they said there'd come a time when the whole world would be fooled. The man named Yeshua says, do not judge by appearances. The appearances of our projections leave us in a world where we're living in a totally false, isolated place. And when we externalize that, then we think that the totally false, isolated place is outside of us. And it leads to all kinds of difficulties. If we could but understand and be restored to sanity, that is, restored to our human lives, the active presence of love, all of that world would disappear. And that's what we're looking to do, is to get this projected world of hostility or fear to disappear, the externalization of all the things that are going on inside of us brought back within and corrected, forgiven, removed. Hostility or fear never belonged in you. It never belonged in me. It never belonged in us as children. It never belonged in our parents. It never belonged in our children. And as long as we're stuck in those things, we have to have somebody to blame it on. What the forgiveness process that's laid out on our website does, if you're not familiar with it, go to whyagain.com. On the right-hand side, there's a link that says Download Worksheets. The first 4 links tell you the whole story. And as you start to collapse the projections, of course, the externalization will no longer be necessary. And then you get to the point where I was talking to someone the other day. We did on Monday night. We're in Sarasota, Florida. Monday night we did a support group where we dug into the worksheet process. And there was a woman there who hadn't been around the worksheet process very much in a while. And afterwards she said, that was so deep for me. I just really got to see the source of my irritation about a particular event. So she did her worksheet around an event where she had been irritated and projected her irritation on someone else, on her brain's image of another person, and then externalized that image on that other person and was powerless over her irritation, didn't like it. For her, she's like, I know it isn't right. I know it's not how I want to live, but, I couldn't see why or where it was coming from. When she did the forgiveness process and collapsed the projection, all of a sudden she's like, wow, that took me to such a deep place, and I had such insight. Now she looks at that person and that circumstance, and irritation is gone. That projection has disappeared. And the need to externalize that projection so she can play innocent victim is gone. And that's the whole idea of the forgiveness process. And to literally get to the point where, ultimately, this is the goal, to literally get to the point where no perception is possible through hostility or fear, where hostility or fear have been so collapsed that your physiology, even when confronted with dire circumstances, won't even produce hostility or fear. You simply stay connected to your human life, to the active presence of love. That's where we want to go with this work, and that's where we're inviting you to come play. It's a whole new field. It's a whole new game when we decide to wake up to who we are. You are the awesome active presence of love. Just ask anybody who's held a newborn. They'll give you the same descriptors. I don't care where you go on the planet. And those descriptors describe you. If you've given you up, the awesome active presence of you, love, up to some form of projection of hostility or fear and externalized it on someone else, we're inviting you through forgiveness to reverse the process, to stop it, and to be restored to your human life. We're working toward restoring human life to every mind, heart, and being on the planet. Fortunately, we don't have to get everybody to understand this conversation. If you go back to the ancient Aramaic, the physicist Yeshua spoke about critical mass when he said a little leavening leavens a whole loaf, that we only need a few. And a few who are truly through the gate and are willing to live in responsibility and remove hostility or fear from themselves in the very capacity to experience hostility or fear. Literally remove it. It's going to be a game changer, and we're looking to change the game because, if you look the last several thousand years on planet Earth, the game hasn't changed much. I went and saw a film a couple of weeks ago, War Horse, a month ago, whatever. And you look at what the manipulations that are done there and the insanity that's done in the name of somebody's hostility. And nothing's changed. They're still doing the same thing. We're still doing the same thing. Fortunately, it isn't necessary to change everybody's mind. It's only necessary to change yours. And we get a critical mass, a little leavening leavens a whole loaf, then we're going to shift the whole game on planet Earth. And it's time for us to be playing a new game, you know? You look over the recorded history, and it's like the game's been pretty bizarre. In the last century, we actually killed over 200 million people on planet Earth. How crazy is that? Jeanie, any callers? Anything happening on the site?
Well, one thing that just somebody said something about it was Groundhog Day, and which, according to the tradition, that means the groundhog saw his shadow this morning, and there's going to be 6 more weeks of winter. But what I thought about with what you were just talking about is Groundhog Day, that we just keep repeating it and doing the day over again. We do have
it's a great movie. That Groundhog Day movie is awesome.
Yeah, and we do have a caller.
Okay, I just to comment on the movie Groundhog Day. If you haven't seen it, dig it out and watch it, or if you haven't watched it in a while, because it does a really powerful demonstration of how this guy who wakes up Groundhog Day every morning, he wakes up to the same scenario and plays the scenario out, and then he starts to figure out that he's got to change the game. And so he tries manipulation, he tries conning, he tries all kinds of different things, and he doesn't finish his Groundhog Day scenario till he wakes up with the active presence of love in his life, in his mind. And all of a sudden, he's in a new world. And it's the same for all of us. If those who never learn to forgive, those who refuse to live a true human life, those who keep blaming everybody else for their hostility and fear, get to live Groundhog Day forever. It's been going on for thousands of years in our bloodline. Time for us to wake up, put it into Groundhog Day. So, Jeanie, you've got a caller. Awesome. Let's say hello.
Area code 541. You're on the air.
Hi, Michael and Jeanie. This is Julie from Ashland.
Hey, Julie.
Hi.
Welcome to the show. Glad you're here.
Me too. I've been meaning to ask, because I don't get a chance to go online, so I'm sorry about that, but your workshop in Florida that's in April coming up on codependence to interdependence. Yes?
Actually, the April workshop is Why Is This Happening to Me Again?
Oh, you changed it?
Well, we started out, we weren't sure which we were going to do, and we kind of did a survey of, there were some people who were early registers, and we checked with them on what they wanted to do, and so we're doing Why Is This Happening to Me Again, and in that 9 days, we'll do Why Is This Happening to Me Again, Healing Through Relationships, Communication, Did You Hear What I Think I Said, Purpose, Personal Power, Commitment, Empowered to Heal, Mind Shifters, Hands-on Energy Field Work, Still Point Breathing. So that'll be 9 days starting April the 6th here in Florida.
Okay, and then what airport does one...
Say again?
What airport does one arrive at?
Jacksonville, Florida.
Okay. Okay, and what day do you want? What day do people arrive?
We'll be asking people to arrive around 1 in the afternoon in Jacksonville, Florida, and no later than 2 o'clock. And then we'll start. We'll be doing a shuttle service. We'll transport people over to the intensive, and we'll start that evening. And then the following. So that's a Friday. That's Friday, Good Friday, August 6th. Pardon me, April 6th. April 6th, let me get that straight. And then the following Saturday, we'll do a closure session in the morning and take people back to the airport, and the plan will be to have people to the airport by 3 o'clock. So the flight out afterward would be 3 in the afternoon. And if there's difficulty, getting flights in by 1 o'clock or after 3, then it might necessitate spending a night in Jacksonville. I don't know.
Okay. And what is the cost?
The intensive food, accommodations, workshop materials, everything's $1,575.
Okay.
Are you thinking about coming?
Well, I was thinking about coming to the codependence one, so I'm not sure now exactly. But I'll get in touch with you on it. I just couldn't find the information, so I was thinking I better ask.
Yeah, we'll be starting a 9-day codependence intensive at Heartland. July, I don't have it in front of me, but it's our first intensive, July. Jeanie, do you remember the date? Is it the 18th?
Hold on, I'm bringing it up.
I can look that up, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, if you look under Heartland Intensives, it's the first intensive. I think it's July 18th will be the starting day, and that again is a Friday. It'll go through the following Saturday, and all the parameters are the same, except that you'd fly into Springfield, Missouri, as close to 1 in the afternoon as possible.
July 13th.
July 13th?
Yep.
Okay, so it's actually July 13th then that we'll start codependent.
All right, well, thank you. That's what I was interested in, and your worksheets are wondrous. They're precise. They're clear. They're non-threatening. They're just doing great work with everyone that I can share them with. Everybody's really appreciating them, so I wanted you to know that.
Well, that's awesome, and that's our whole intention for doing what we do, our purpose in doing that. And how's Ed doing?
He's on a retreat that he designed for himself, and so he's basically staying silent and away from obligations and doing his inner work, and actually really excited and happy about getting to do that, the opportunity of it.
Awesome. Well, tell him we hold the space and we cherish sharing the planet with him, and he's got all of our support. And he's got my phone number if he needs any support.
Yes. Okay, thank you. Thank you. I'll tell him.
All right, blessings. Where are you now? Are you doing your support group now in California or in Oregon?
In Oregon, in Ashland and Medford.
So there are two support groups.
Tuesday. Mm-hmm.
Monday night in Ashland?
Yes.
Tuesday night in Medford.
Yeah, and Medford is 7 to 9, but Ashland is earlier. It's 4 to 6.
Cool. And do we have the flyers on the website with the details for that?
I don't think so. It's been a long time since I've touched base with that sort of thing with you.
If you will send me an email with the dates and times on it, I'll be sure and get it out there.
Okay. All right, Jeanie. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, we'll put her on the spot for anybody who wants to attend. So if you're in Medford, Oregon at Unity on Monday nights, there's a support group working with these tools, and on Tuesday Tuesday afternoon, late afternoon, there's a support group in Medford.
Other way around.
Ashland.
So the other way around. Hold on. Mondays, first and third Mondays are Ashland from 4 to 6 p.m., and Tuesdays are in Medford, first and third Tuesdays from 7 to 9 p.m. at Christ Unity Church.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Cool. Well, we're delighted that you're on the team in doing that, and we'll look forward to seeing you in Florida or at Heartland. That will be awesome.
Yeah. Yes, I'm looking forward to something soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Blessings. Take care. Bye-bye. Excuse me, Jeanie?
I think that was Julie still talking in the background. So we do not have another caller right at the moment. Our calling number is 646-200-4169. Press 1. It puts you in queue to talk to Michael.
And the person who had asked the question about projection externalization, did that explanation make sense and fit? Any other questions or comments around that?
It was Nene, and she has not said anything else. So.
Well, I'm going to presume that it was an adequate explanation, and you know, it's interesting that our whole culture believes that what we see in our minds is actually happening outside of us, and that all the reasons for upset that are happening in our minds are reasons that are outside of us that cause our upset. You know, in order for us to end this game of war, we've got to reverse that, and we've got to find enough people who are actually willing to love truth enough to go, let me see. I don't know if I understand this, but it makes some sense. So, okay, I'll go ahead and I will plug in and do the forgiveness process. And as you do, what you'll find is you collapse the projections. And as you collapse the projections, you go back in touch with the dissociated part of your own mind. And when you change that, all of a sudden, everything in your life magnificently changes. So we're here to support you in that kind of magnificent change. And we'd love to hear your sweet voice. If you and I were sitting alone in a room, would you have a question for me? Then that question is everybody else's question who's listening to the show. That's why it's coming to your mind. And we would love for you to call us and ask that question so that we can, in a live way, interact with your questions and give you meaningful answers and refine those answers to the point where they really do give you the method, the tools to move in the direction of forgiveness, because that's our whole purpose of being here, is that process of forgiveness. So we'd love to hear your sweet voice. 646-200-4169. Is there anything in the chat room, Jeanie? Anything on the phone? Any callers?
No.
If you're on the phone.
No other messages. Yes. If you are on the phone, press 1.
Yeah, if you're on the phone and you have a question, press 1. We would love to hear from you and step into this world of forgiveness in a new way. A good exercise, you know, we had a conversation a couple days ago about codependence, and a good exercise can be to list all of the behaviors that your power person did, and our definition of a power person is somebody who has more power over your life than you did. So, you know, it doesn't mean you need to diss your power person. You know, sometimes people go, I could, you know, that person's gone, they died, I couldn't possibly say something bad about them. We're not asking you to say something bad about them. We're just asking you to be willing to love truth enough to look at what kind of behaviors did they do that you didn't like, that you said, you know, if you were into projection externalization, you probably said things like, well, that really hurts when you say that. When you do that, that really bothers me. That causes me a lot of pain. You really upset me when you say that. So whatever it is that you dislike that your power person did, we're going to ask you to make a list of. And as you list it out, something that you are in blockage of truth about. If you're living the standard life as non-humans live today, that is, those who are not living as the active presence of love, and a power person is someone with whom you live that had more power over your life than you did, who was not functioning out of love. So we're asking you to delineate each thing that your power person did that you didn't like. You know, maybe they yelled at you, maybe they berated you, maybe they picked on you, maybe they were angry with you all the time, maybe they raged at you, maybe they physically struck out and hit you, maybe they talked about you behind your back. Maybe you tried your best to do everything to make them happy, but they were always upset with you, always had something to criticize. So just go through and look at all the things that your power person did that you didn't like. And as you get that list down, then what you're going to find is that when the stress is up and the chips are down, and you probably block this, so you don't know this about yourself right now, you do exactly those same things. But here's how we keep from knowing that we do exactly the same things. Our mind calls it something else. So let's say if your power person attacked you regularly. Now, inside your power person's mind, they didn't call it attack. It didn't look like attack to them. They called it offering you correction. They called it offering you support. So inside of their mind, when their voice sharpened and they went into that attack mode, their mind showed them constructed a reality. Their projection was, well, this is just how I support you being a better person. But if your mind said, gee, Dad, why do you criticize me all the time? Why are you always picking on me? Then that type of criticism or that type of being picked on will tend to become the behavior you do when you're under stress. But your mind won't tell you that it's picking on or criticizing. Your mind will say, well, I'm just trying to help him improve. And once you see that, and once you forgive that dynamic, then you'll shift behaviors. You'll no longer function out of your power person behavior. You know, when one is under stress, or, well, let's say there are 3 levels of behavior possible when one is functioning out of a power person dynamic. And that is, when there's no stress, a person will automatically do whatever they did to get along with their power person. When stress starts to build, a person will automatically shift into behaviors that were what they did to resist and survive with their power person. And then, when one becomes ultra-stressed, they'll do whatever their power person did to them that they hated the most. So I invite you to make a list of those things that you really disliked your power person saying and doing, and or saying and doing to you. And as you make a list, you now have a list of your behaviors under stress. You don't believe that's true because your mind categorizes something totally different. However, if you live in blockage of truth, if you can't look at the truth of that, if you can't make the shift, you know, in the book, Why Is This Happening to Me Again, there's the character Richard, and we have him going into a restaurant, and he sits down at coffee, and some coffee spills on his saucer, and he has on a nice clean shirt, and all of a sudden the waitress kind of hurriedly races over and grab his coffee. He has this automatic reaction to just bite her head off. Now, in her mind, what she was doing was saving his shirt from having coffee spilled on it. In his mind, his projection was, she's taking something from me. And so when his mind shows him she's taking something from him, his reaction of attack, his reaction, you know, biting her head off, so to speak, his mind says, well, I'm just protecting what's mine. I'm just taking care of my own. So he has, when he goes into that hostility, he has a lie he tells himself. This is just taking care of myself. Excuse me, a hostile behavior will never take care of you. It will never support you. So his hostility, he calls protecting himself, as opposed to hostility. He's not going to be able to change it until he can love truth enough to go, oh, I just did hostility, rather than I just protected myself. And once we start to open that space to see those dynamics in our relationships with each other, that's when everything begins to change. And, of course, the big change is that you remove all hostility and fear, and that every behavior that you do comes from a connected space of love, that you maintain your connection to Source. And, you know, if you hold a newborn child, everybody knows what the newborn is. It's the awesome presence of love, and I'd offer that's our source. If you go back to the ancient teachings, it says we're made in the image and likeness of the Creator. We're the offspring of the Creator. And the Creator is love. We are that awesome thing called love. And we're here to help you to be restored to that awesome presence of love, which is your proper power supply. It'll make your mind hum like it's never hummed before. It'll make your physiology correct, heal, move forward, do awesome things that you perhaps never imagined were possible. Because what will happen is the blocks to the proper movement of energy through the system will begin to dissolve. And as they do, you'll plug back into that awesome power supply called love. A power supply that's designed to run a human form. So that's what we're here to support you in. Jeanie, do we have any callers, questions in the chat room?
No, it's really quiet today. Nobody else. There's several people in the chat room, several people on the phone, but nobody's saying anything. Nobody has their hand up. And we're down to about 9 minutes. Oh, we just had a hand pop up. Area code 336. You're on the air.
Hello, it's Paula from Greensboro, from Unity.
Hi.
How are you?
How are you?
Good. So I just, since it's quiet today, a few weeks ago, Dr. Tim, I think.
Are you on a speakerphone, Paula? Are you on a speakerphone?
I was. You want me to get off of that?
Oh, yeah, that's much better.
Yeah, there was such an echo I couldn't understand your words.
Sorry. Okay, well,
cool.
I think a couple of weeks ago, Dr. Tim had said something about, it was somebody that mentioned the book. Just read the first 3 chapters of Getting the Love You Want book by Harville Hendricks. So I went and got the book. So I borrowed the book because I've never read it. And it truly is fascinating. So I have to just tell you how it's affecting me is this. First of all, there is just no such thing as romantic love. I mean, we're just all robots resonating with each other's unfinished business from our childhood. So that's what we've been calling, attraction, romantic first sight, seeing somebody. I mean, that's what we're picking up on. This is what I've been getting from it. And
we call those relationships based in matching bags of garbage.
Right. And it just the way that's written, the example after example, it sends the message home. Like if I hadn't gotten it yet, I really got it from this book even more. And that the other piece is, you know what? If I become involved with a man, I keep saying I'd like to find a partner, I now know that for myself, they have got to be interested and involved in this philosophy or, whatever. I mean, I think it's an immutable truth. Doing this work. Because
it wouldn't make much sense to be in a relationship where one isn't doing their work because it's otherwise it's just so bizarre. And
because I get that I would waste all my time again. Like that's what I've been doing is waste my time. Of course, it was my junk that needed to be worked on, but I was always trying to help them as well, right? Which doesn't work. But why would I? If I've got to deal with my own and they're not willing, I don't want them in my life.
Well, I hear you. I hear you. It doesn't make a lot if one isn't willing to enter into. And that's where real relationship, here's my take. Here's where real human life starts. Human life starts when we stop blaming everybody else and we stop thinking external circumstances are causing things to happen to us, and we step into responsibility. We start to awaken that spark of the divine in us when we do that. And there's the real presence of human life. And to me, the real purpose of relationship is to support that presence and to activate that presence and to move forward in the world as that active presence. And that's the real meaning of relationship.
Yep. Well, thanks.
Well, that's awesome. Well, you've inspired me. I did hear just the tail end of Tim talking. I did hear Tim talking about Harville Hendricks' book, and I've heard of it, but I've never read it. But you've inspired me today. I'm going to go out and buy it. I'm going to get on eBay and order it and have a look at it and just see what Harville's got to say. I've had many people over the years that say there are a lot of parallels in what we do. So I'll go order the book and see what he's got to say. Thank you for that.
Well, it is. It's exactly your work. It's just, getting to read real-life stories and seeing them played out. I got an experience of it right then for myself because I can map on my own life to so many of the things. Things that hadn't come up yet for me to do a worksheet on, they were just popping all over the place reading this book.
Well, thank you, Harville. That's awesome. Maybe one of these days we can connect with Harville and get him on the show with us. That would be cool.
Oh, that would be fabulous. Thank you. Bye.
All right, Paula, thanks for your call. Blessings. Take care. Bye-bye.
Uh-huh.
Pass it along. Any other callers? Anything happening in the chat room to be aware of?
No, that seems to be about it, and we're down to 4 minutes.
Time flies when you're having fun. Well, the place where we address the issues that Paula just brought up are in the workshop Healing Through Relationships and in Codependence to Interdependence. And, of course, when we think that somebody is a body, then we don't relate to them as a being. When you hold a human child, a newborn child, you're in relationship with the being. You'll notice it's not a word state. It's not something you say. It's just a direct experience of a human life. And when we start relating to each other as that direct experience of human life, then you've got true relationship happening. As long as you're relating with a body, then you don't have relationship with the being. And all bodies come from the firing of brain cells. All of those images come, just like the clown's face we talked about, come from the firing of brain cells. And once we start to collapse those pictures that are based in hostility or fear, then we have the opportunity to begin to open true relationship and true interaction with another being. We function instead of as a body in relationship to another body. We function as a being in relationship to another being. And, of course, we express and experience through these energy fields. And the energy fields that we express and experience through were designed to be the Garden of Eden. They were designed to be the place where we could bring our human lives, this awesome power supply, this presence of love forward into the world and into our relationships with each other. And because our minds have been structured by so many generations of hostility and fear and grief and pain and war, what ends up happening is those things play out in our body's minds. And, of course, when something's playing out in my body's mind, if I believe that body's outside of me, then I want to accuse that body of causing something to happen inside of me, and I refuse to collapse what's happening inside of me because it's you that needs to change. Once I really, truly enter into a relationship, and I realize that my relationship is about, do I have something less than love in me? Then I'm going to invite support for healing. Is there something less than love happening in you? Then I'm going to be the space of support for your healing. And our connecting, our joining is about really joining heart to heart, being to being as humans, and empowering and bringing this human life into our forms, into our energy fields for full, free, total expression. That's what we're really here for. And so as we are able to attune to and see each other as human beings, we are empowering the drawing in of that being. In the ancient Eastern Orthodox culture or community, the whole idea of the work was incarnation, to incarnate our human beingness, this awesome active presence of love. And that's what we're here to support you in. We invite you to bring somebody to the show with you tomorrow. Next Monday night, we'll be in Sarasota doing a support group. There's lots of support groups on the website. Check it out all over the country, all over the globe, and have the best year yet of your eternal life. Blessings.
Thank you for listening to Mind Shifters Radio with the Forgiveness Doctor, Dr. Michael Ryce, and his wife Jeanie, who present the internal Aramaic process of forgiveness. Michael and Jeanie are here every Monday through Friday on Earth Angels Radio. For more on Michael and Jeanie, please visit www.whyagain.com. That's www.whyagain.com.
Evolving continuously.